Good morning. Sorry about that blip in the beginning there. How are you all doing? Happy Saturday. It's 10 a.m. here in Washington, D.C. and you know what? It's what we always do. We jump on a stream and we continue chipping away at this library, mlops.net, which I just love, and it's so much fun to work with y'all on this project and continue exploring different things and realizing things we need and things we don't need, to be honest. I will say that this morning I am fairly unprepared for the stream today, which is going to be fun as well. Fun experience to pivot a bit on things you want to do. I had some ideas. We were supposed to stream with Ravi this morning and continue our machine learning for developers session. But unfortunately he had other things he needed to attend to, so we are going to continue working on mlops.net today, which is completely fine, exactly fair and useful. So we will see what we do today. Something I definitely want to do today is jump into even further back on a data track a bit and look at different kind of unit tests for data and models. And I will explain a bit more about that later and kind of see where we're going to. But first off, before we get started, how are you all doing today? How's everyone feeling? Have they had a chance to look at the repo in the last few weeks? Is there anything specific you want to ask me? Anything specific you want me to look into today? It can be related to mlops.net or just ml.net in general. Just chime in, and I'll be happy to pivot and look at that with you guys. If anyone is, hey Brett, good to have you on the stream. How are you doing today? If anyone is interested in learning more about ml.net from scratch, I'm giving a talk this Tuesday, I think, an upcoming Tuesday for .NET South in Brighton, I think. And we're going to give an introductory talk to ml.net and look at some good examples and code examples and so forth. You can definitely tune into that. There's a meetup link on my LinkedIn page, and I'm sure I'll post that on Twitter as well once we get closer to Tuesday. I'm currently otherwise also working on a workshop for NDC Melbourne that is going to happen in just end of the month here. It's going to be a full day workshop together with John Wood and Reactman and Louise. And we are putting the content together slowly, and it's going to be a really fun workshop, I think. I'm good, Brett, thank you. Just enjoying my Saturday, enjoying being here with y'all, and working on this repo together. And I was just saying that the Melbourne conference is kind of what inspired me for today's session. Because when I was working through the material, and I'll show you in a bit actually what I'm doing here, I'm realizing there are some gaps on how you would do this without this library. So what I'm doing right now is actually trying to build a section on the workshop for the ml.net workshop, specifically related to mlops. And I'm trying to do it without our library, because our library is not necessarily in a production ready state yet. But I'm trying to work through that without the library. And I'm finding new things that we could add, and that would be nice to do. But to give you an idea of that first, what I would like to do here is quickly zone into the mlops process again and think about what we may be missing here. Because I rediscovered something yesterday actually when doing this that I want to just highlight to you as well. And I think the best way to highlight things is to show them in a diagram like this. So we all well, by now at least, I think most of us are pretty aware of the flow of mlops in general. And there's some other steps both on these sides here, right? But in general, what we want to do is train a model, we want to evaluate the performance, and we want to get deployed. That's the central pieces of mlops as we know it. And there's also, of course, tracking of the life cycles and the experiments and so forth, and retraining here on this end here. But these are generally the central parts here. But there are two very fine details here that I kind of rediscovered that I want to make sure we add support for as well. And the first one here is something that goes before training that I would like to call data validation tests. And what do I mean with data validation tests? I think I've probably been in discussing this before at some point, but not in the MLOps.NET context. But when I speak about data validation tests, I think about ways to make sure data actually makes sense to us. So if we have data with prices, then we need to make sure that we don't have any negative prices. If we have data with date ranges, we have to make sure that date ranges make sense, because if they don't, they can definitely skew the model and make it very strange for us. So we want that kind of those data tests in our pipeline to ensure that things look as expected. And I think we can add some value here in our library as well to simplify these tests. At least I had that idea of the first go when I was trying to discover how to do this. The second go, I have a pretty sleek way of doing it, honestly, without the library. So we can discuss that a bit and see if we want to do that or not. The second thing I want to add here as well, after evaluate, or in conjunction with evaluate, to be honest, we need something that I call model tests. And that necessarily is not, so evaluate here, right? What we do here is checking the accuracy, F1 score, different kind of metrics depending on what ML task you're doing. That's the evaluation step in my mind. The model test here is more like, okay, I have these set of data that I am certain that I want a specific response on. For example, let's say you have, you're doing a classifier for images, right? And you want to make sure they can actually discover a tomato in a picture. So you want to send that picture in and say, okay, you need to, as a baseline, this needs to be a tomato. Like if you can't discover it's being a tomato, you know, we're in trouble. So that's kind of a model test. And other model tests we can also think about here is saying, okay, I got this model now. I have this F1 score or whatever accuracy I got from my evaluation step. Is this model better than my production model or the current contender, if you will? So we may want the step here that we pull down the best model we have registered and compare the metrics with that one, and we fail the pipeline if our model is not better than we already have. Because there's no real good point in continuing this flow with something that's garbage or something that actually won't be better than we currently have in production. So there's a value here in making sure we stop the pipeline and we don't deploy it to test environment and we just fail it here. Make sense? Okay. So we have this test here, and I'm going to make these different color just because I am getting confused otherwise. Exactly, yeah, exactly, real business cases. So this is us coming in and saying, hey, I know this is supposed to be this. So if you need to tell me it actually is the case. So that's good. But what happens after we deploy it? So deployment can be very different depending on what problem you're trying to solve here. It could be as simple as just uploading to Azure Blob Storage and exposing it as a URI for your web app to consume. It could be creating a Docker container. It could be all kinds of things. And it can also be deploying it to a test environment or directly to production. Don't do that. But it can be tons of stuff here. But one thing that we also want to do after we deploy it, so let's say we deploy it to a test environment, right? Which is probably what we want to do. And we want to run some exploratory testing or whatever against this environment here. One thing we want to do in that case, which we can automate, is contract testing. So that's another kind of level of testing as well we can add to this. So we can say that, okay, I got this, let me see here. Okay, we got this car price prediction that we're going to use in this workshop, for example. And we're going to deploy that to a test environment to predict prices for a car. But we train our model only on American cars and not on European cars or Asian cars, something like that, right? So we know our model is very good American cars, but we wouldn't want to start predicting European cars because we don't know what's going to happen. He has no idea what those makes are, what they are valued for, and so forth. So we want some contract testing here as well to ensure that our input data is reasonable and our output predictions are good as well. And we also, in contract testing here, want to make sure that what we actually send in is what we're going to use. So for example, Contact testing is more like an integration test in my view. Like we deploy it as part of an application in some ways, and the application is going to try to make predictions based on what it needs. So if we have trained a model with 5 features, let's say, and our application still only sends 4, the contact test is going to fail because we don't have sufficient data to make a prediction. So contact testing is a way to ensure that things still work together properly, right? So this could be deploying it to a Docker container. We can deploy the container to an AKS cluster in Azure, and then we can run a couple of automated tests against this one or something like that to ensure that it still works as expected. So that is definitely getting more complicated as further right we go. But what I want to look at today is these 2 here, because that's what I was doing yesterday, and I was finding more and more cases for these ones. So before we look at them, let's look at how I would have done it without our library. So what I've been doing yesterday is creating this repo here for our NDC Melbourne workshop. This is just for our MLOps section right here. Yes, deployment. That's a good question, Brett. We can go back to that if you want to. Deployment is a good question, right? I haven't fully decided yet. I had some ideas. What I'm thinking of here is that we have... yeah, sure, that's good. It's a good question though. So what I'm thinking here is what we do right now, right? When we evaluate a model, right? Or just when we do this training and validation step here, we have a model repo, right? It could be in GitHub, Azure Storage container or something else. But what we do is that when we're happy with a model, we register it here in the model repo, right? And we say, okay, I'm here now. If you need me, you can download it from here. What I'm thinking here as well is that in addition to having it in a model repo, we would also have, let's see here, we would have another place, maybe in the same place, just a different folder with a table direction saying registered models. And this is the way MLflow works as well. So if a model is deemed to be good enough, so for example, if it passes the model test here, we will register it as a model that we may want to deploy. So you cannot deploy just things from the model repo directly. You can only deploy things from a registered model repo. And they probably are hosted in the same way, it's just a different folder or structure. Can be used a different table pointed at the same ones. But if you have registered a model because you actually want to deploy it, you can then deploy it to your environments. When it comes to deployment here, I think we have multiple scenarios here. So we can either expose it as saying, okay, I want to deploy this to a test environment, and we may, in that sense, just allow them to deploy it as a file in a blob container and give them back the file path as public with doors and credentials. We may want them to be able to deploy this Docker container either directly or download a container. So that's another scenario. So there's tons of different things here as well. And I've added a couple of issues for that here to look through if you wanted to. So the idea here is to register a model in some kind of table like this. And remember, this needs to be versioned, and I haven't added this into this issue. So I'll add it here. So for example, if we register a new model for the same experiment, we need to be able to support versions. So have like version 1, and then you get a new model that's better, and version 2, and so forth. And we then have the ability here to create deployment environments. So for example, we can say we want a test environment and we want a production environment, and we need to specify how we can deploy to them. So deployment type here is what I'm thinking. So either we want to say, okay, this is going to be path deployments, so we're just going to copy this model over to a place where applications can consume it, and we'll give you the URI for it. Or we're going to generate a container using roster and something like that with a web API in it, and you can either get it for yourself or you can deploy it directly to a cluster that we manage. So that's going to be, it's definitely, deployment is going to be fun and tricky, but I'm really excited about that. So we have some issues here that we can create the underlying methods for if we wanted to at least. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right. No worries. Good question. So in this case here, at least, what we have here is very similar to what we used before. We have data here for predicting car prices. I'm going to open that data so you can see it, and I'll give you an idea of what we're trying to do here. Let's see, where's the data? Oh, it should be here. One second. It's kind of not a big data file, but big enough that it will take a while to open as well. But in general, what that data contains is like prices and makes of cars and all kinds of fun stuff. Let's see if you get it open. Where do you go? Come on. Excel opening large file is never a good idea. Here we go. Let me try that one more time. Okay, here we go. So we do have like simple stuff like a price here. We got the year of the car, we got the mileage, the city, state, VIN number, that's like identifier for a car, the make and so forth. And the idea with this dataset is to use this data here to predict the price of the car. So it's a simple example of ML.NET for regression examples. And we have like a very standard pipeline for that here, so we don't need to go into this, but it's just kind of building stuff. It's pretty standard. So the idea here is that we want to put this in a pipeline to do MLOps, so train and evaluate and deploy in some way. And I created a repo for that here with a CI flow here, so with GitHub Actions, a YAML file, where we actually create a mount point here. Let me zoom in a bit. The flow is kind of what you would assume it is. We have our training part right here, where we actually run, right here. We will run the project, which means that we will actually train it, right? And we have the previous step here is just to kind of build it and restore everything. But what you'll find here as well is interesting is that we are not, since the file is so big, we're not going to embed it into our application like we usually do, because it's pretty big. Instead, what I've done is I put it on an Azure file share here, which is a way we can do this. And I'm mounting the file share to my runner here, my agent. So I'm creating a mount point by creating a data folder here in Ubuntu Linux, and then I'm mounting that folder here so I get access to the file as it would be local instead. And like that, I don't need to download it all the time like that, and it's just a bit easier. But what you'll see here as well is that I'm running something called beta tests here before I train a model. And I'm running something called model test after I train a model, right? Just as we saw in the flow in Visio. So let's look at what they would look like and what the challenges are here. And I think I have that open. Yep. So what we're doing here is we're running these data tests and these model tests right here. And they are pretty simple. I mean, there's nothing advanced here. But when it comes to the data validation test here, what I'm doing here is I'm loading my data using the ML context. I'm getting all the rows as a enumerable by the model input type here, and then I'm running different kinds of scenarios. And for example, what you could do here is check the mileage. Is all the mileage positives? Because it doesn't make any sense that we have a negative mileage. And the same thing with price, and we also maybe want to make sure that the year here is valid. And we can do that really simply by just saying, okay, loop over all my rows and check if any price is negative. Loop all of my rows and check if we have a valid year, so maybe from 1950 to the year +1, because you know car makers like to do the 2021 model in 2020, and make sure we have at least this many rows before training. So this is just an example of like how data tests would look like. We validate the data to make sure that it makes sense for us, and we validate the data to make sure that we have at least number of rows that we want here. So before I changed to using the ML context, I tried to use the CSV helper package, and I tried to use a data frame package for this. And both of them are very verbose, to the extent that I wanted to build this into our library. Right now, I'm not sure if we want to build it, because this is actually pretty sleek, honestly. The only thing we would save is we could build this into one method. So we would, instead of doing this, we would just initialize a context of our own here and pass in the data, and it will get better rows. But I kind of like the way we just use link here. Sounds good, Reds. Have a great day. Thanks for joining in. So it's kind of sleek here, right? We don't necessarily have much to do here. So we definitely have to look at this later, but I want to make sure you understand that we have data validation tests here that we may want to evolve here and probably add to our library. I just don't know how yet. When it comes to the model tests here, they are kind of what you expect as well. What we're doing here is checking things we know against the trained model to make sure they actually make sense. So for example, we can take a low range car or a mid range car, and we want to make sure that our prediction ends up in a range that are acceptable for us. So for example, we can get a prediction engine here, which is just loading the model into memory, and we can then make a prediction based on data we know, so a Chevrolet from 2006 here, and we want to make sure that it ends up in the range of $2,000 to $6,000. It's a pretty broad range, but our model is not great neither. And the same thing with a mid-range car and a high-range car. So we can run those tests after our trading to ensure that we have some sanity here with our data. But one thing you will notice here is that I can't compare my model with a model current in production because I don't have access to that. And the way I save my model right now is just I'm using that file share to save it at. So when I save it, I actually save it into my file share. And of course we know that mops.net, we can save it to our model repository instead, which is going to work as nicely. But in model test here, what I really want to do here, and I'm not sure if we're mature enough for this yet, but what I would like to do here, to give you an indication, is I would like to do, say, public void compare model with registered, or something like that. And I want to say get the current registered model, get metrics for this and the previous, compare. So I want to be able to fetch the best run, and I think AGS implemented that already, although it's going to hit our artifact store, not registered models. And we also want to be able to fetch this current model here. And that gives us a very interesting dilemma, because when we run the model test, we no longer have access to the run ID that we created in the training step here. So we need to find a way to get access to the run ID in some way here. And I've been thinking about different approaches, and my head is spinning, and I'm not sure which one is the best one. So I'll throw them out here, and I would love some comments on this and discussions on this, because there are some ideas here. Like, one way, of course, that's very easy, but probably is very error prone, is getting the latest run. And that will probably in 99% of the cases get us the run that we want. But if you run multiple pipelines in parallel, it's a chance you'll get the wrong one. A second option here to get the run ID that we did when we trained a model is by getting an environmental variable. So let's say we store that run ID as an environmental variable in our run step. We can expose a method, for example, saying set run ID, and then we can fetch it using a method here as well, getting an environmental variable for run ID. It works pretty well, I think, in many cases, because it would work pretty well in like GitHub Actions. We have isolated agents, probably in TeamCity as well, but it's a little bit rough for me, if that makes sense. It's not so pretty. The third option here is to get run by associated tag, and this is probably the one I like the most. And what do I mean with that? Well, if we look at what we can store here in ML.NET here, if we look at the context here, and I think it has to do with life cycles, we can create a run here with a git commit hash. And I would almost want to repurpose this one to not be commit hash, but, well, yeah, it's going to be commit hash in general, I guess. But we can create a run that has associated itself with a git commit hash of some sort. And that is probably a good idea, because I'm trying to think here. In this case here, what we can do is we can say that, okay, store the git commit hash for the run. We need a way to be able to find it by the commit hash. So the reason why I think it's good is because you can easily get the commit hash or the SHA or whatever you want to store here from the workflow file here. There are, let's see, GitHub SHA, hash, GitHub actions. There are variables in the flow where you can use. Let's see. I think this is a good documentation for that. So you see here we can use this GitHub context or the environment context. But this GitHub context, for example, is really useful because it has stuff like run ID, it has stuff like the SHA here, so commit SHA, those things. So we can, for example, in this case here, pass in the GitHub SHA from a variable, or we can just use, I think we have environmental variables here somewhere. Or we can just set it as an environment variable as well and fetch it within our trainer here. But regardless, this is pretty easy to get in either one or another. We could save it in a program file, and we can then fetch that in our model test to be able to query our metadata store to find a run that is associated with this one. And that will be a pretty, I think, sleek way of getting the run by some kind of association at least. And it's probably the most stable way of doing this. So what I want to do actually today is exposing a method where we can query a run by git commit hash here, because I think that would be the best way of doing this. Cool, makes sense, hopefully. We'll try it at least. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I feel like right now I'm in a stage here with this repo that I'm exploring a lot here what I think would work, and I would love your input as well, what you think would work. But it's helpful to try these things out, and if it doesn't work, we'll just make them obsolete and go somewhere else. Because we are exploring this library right now and trying to find something that works for everyone here. Alright, so let's see. So in our case, we already have a method for storing this, so we don't necessarily need to create that association. This is already there. What we need to create here is a way to fetch it by this commit hash. And we have a method here to get runs, I think. Get run by run ID, right? And get run by experiment ID. So what we want to do now is get a run by git commit hash instead. And let's do that. We'll get that by this one here. Copy this one over. Actually, we'll make this fresh up. And I'll call it commit hash. And add a okay. Like that. I think that makes sense. I'll go back and implement this to here. And we'll just use the same documentation as we had before. And this is going to be an interesting one to implement. And after I've done this, I do want to go in and look at the MLOps context as well to redo that a bit. So we have that, and okay, well that's fine. It doesn't return all values yet. So this should be a pretty simple one to do. We'll just go ahead and do this. There you go. It's kind of easy, this one. And we'll need to add some unit tests for this as well, or other tests. So let's do that in a bit. But let me first of all make sure we open this up for the bigger world here, because we want that in the evaluation in the life cycle catalog here. Like that. So we can use it as well. And we'll do metadata store here, get run, and commit hash. Get run by git commit hash. Nice. Okay. So I think that is good. Alright, so let's add some unit tests for this to make sure that works. I think we have some tests here. We want to make sure we add them for these environments as well. We'll have to look at that later. But let's start with, in this case, Azure. Let's start with SQL Server first. It'll be easier. And, yep, I think that's good. Start with SQLite, to be honest. So we have probably some tests here for get run. We need to add some more for later. Let's add one right here. Test method. Given run with git commit hash should get run. I think that's fair. Not the best name, but alright, so we need to do some stuff here. So we'll do arrange here, act, assert. Cool. Well, I hope you're all doing well so far. I hope you're getting something out of this. I wish I could work on this library more, spend some more time on it. There's so much I want to do, and so much I want to get done. So little time. But I guess that's life with everything, right? Alright, so we should be able to do this. Life cycle, create, run. Perfect. So a thing here I see directly is that we need an experiment ID here, so we're not currently able to create a run. Oh, we do actually. Good, we can. My bad. Experiment, and we'll set commit hash 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, right? Because we'll use that later for a query. And now we should be able to do get run. By commit hash. Okay, interesting. I like that. And we should be able to. So now what we want to do here is, in real life, this operation right here is going to be a different file and different context than this operation here. And the only thing that we have shared there is commit hash. So in general, we would not have the run ID for a longer period of time here. But what I can do now is compare the run ID is the same as the one for the saved run here, and that would make sense here. So saved run ID here should be run ID. And I know that looks kind of funny here, I think, but it's not. And wait, yeah. Because in general we would not have this run ID when we do this, but this is a really good test actually. Let's see if this runs. And let's run all these tests here. Make sure we haven't broken anything. And then we'll add them to the SQL tests and Azure test to make sure they also work. So right now we share the same metadata store for all of them, for all the different implementations, but we have different integration tests for each of them. So let's just ensure that we haven't broken anything for them. But there's a lot of work I want to do here as well to make sure that we actually make something simpler here. Okay, so these are the tests I want to pass. Let's see how they do. They fail. Okay, only one. And this is okay, the log data. And that's fine, we have a schema update issue here, so that's okay, we can skip that right now. Not a big issue. Okay, so that passes. And anything else I want to do here? I think that's fine. So let's copy this test over for the SQL implementation and Azure, and let's try to run those. And then we can put this up there. And I'll do some other tests. And then I want to fix this one at some point, yeah, because I did the mistake of not doing that. Azure. Okay, all right. And I wonder if I have my Azure. Yep, Cosmos is running. Okay, so that should be good. I have a Cosmos emulator locally that runs, which allows me to run these tests locally right now, which is good. And SQL Server, we want those to run. We want the Azure test to run as well. There we go. Let's see if they work. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So what would you like to see on this stream going forward? I should put a poll out there as well. I know that the last few weeks there has been a lot of repetitive work here on the repo. Some may be interested to see and watch, and some may not be so interested to see and watch here. I'll be curious to learn more about what kind of things you would like to see here as well going forward. So definitely think of that a bit as well. Okay. Cool, they pass, and then this one's probably gonna fail because I don't have that one running, I think. It's a container. That's okay. Okay, let's open the issue I have right now, or fix the one I already do here. I'm gonna change this one to add ability to get by git hash. Okay. Do edit. And to fetch. Okay, this is issue 194, so we're going to go ahead and open a PR with this, create branch, issue 194. This is going to be good. Why is it good? Because we can now in the test fetch that run by that, and we can make comparisons, for example, with like if the metrics is good enough for us. So for example, maybe we want the accuracy to be a certain level, maybe we want the F1 score to be a certain level. Maybe we just want to fetch down the model as well and run a test against that. So we can get a run, and then we can sequentially get the model using the run ID from our repo and store it locally. And then we can do anything else we want there. So it's definitely a useful method. I can see many use cases here just by this simple method right here. Why is it so different? Interesting. One second here. Something is off. Okay. I think I copied the wrong one here, that's why. That's okay. We'll fix that. 131. Let's copy the right test. I copied one with the wrong name, and that messed things up a bit. I don't want that one. I want this one. Okay, and I want the same one in the SQL Server. We'll push this up. I think it's going to pass anyway, so. Okay, let's see. That looks better. Okay. Alright, let's open a PR with this. Oh nice, we got a little bump here from the Penabot as well. Can use that. Oop. Let's edit this one here. 194. This method will be useful when we, for example, run model tests, as we can fetch, run and model by just using the which we easily can get from the Actions workflow. Compare things such as model performance. We run our own model tests. Okay. All right. That's good. This is ready for review. All right. So that's good. That's a good start today. So what's next? Well, the next thing I want to do here is look at our context. I'm not really happy with that's working, and I want us to make it a little bit simpler for us. So if you look at the context right here, so the ML ops DB context storage, this one right here, it's pretty simple, it's good, but we do have some issues here with the way we used to do this, I think. Because right now, when you want to get a run, we are not leveraging Entity Framework properly here. So we are like, get data, it's going to go and fetch the data here, but then we have to go and fetch each corresponding schema and columns and everything else here, and return data here. And it's just, we shouldn't need this, because we should be able to use it in the framework, watch properties, and get that for us. And the reason why we don't do that is because we initially wanted to be interfaces, and we initially wanted that to be flat, so we can have different providers. But I don't think we need to worry about that too much anymore. I think by moving everything here already, we are pretty good in that sense. So I would rather have us return things more like as expected, I think, if that makes sense. So there's quite a few things we want to change here for that, and it has to do with entities. So I would like to remove these interfaces here, and I would like us to just have these entities instead. And then on the entities, for example, run, I want us to be able to actually map the metrics one here, and the metrics one will just be more as expected, I think. So I'm gonna give that a try. I don't know if it's going to work as expected. I want to add some more tests for this before we do this, to make sure things work. So first of all, I want to add some tests here, and then I'm gonna make this refactoring here to see if it's gonna work. And what I want to do here is look at our tests here. I think we have log data, right? Okay. Should log data. I think I have one here that would be a good test here. This one logs the data and it has a lot of dependencies, and we'll get the data and it goes through the schema here, data columns. Okay, this is a great test actually already, because what it does here is that in log data sync we use this functionality that I'm worried about breaking. We are storing things into different properties, but when we get the data here later, we actually construct our objects based on the data, but also on the corresponding ones that we fetch from the database. So if this works, we should be good. And honestly, this shouldn't break in general, because we already have this in place. But I do want to refactor the metadata store later to remove some of this logic here. All right, a lot of talking. Sorry about that. More doing, right? So let's go ahead and copy over these things first. So I'm going to move over my interfaces here to my idle screen. Oop. And then I'm going to copy over the descriptions here that we need, because now we need like public properties here, or public XML comments here. And that would be, I think, an easy way of doing this. Just to make it a bit simpler. And I'll show you what I mean with that in just a bit here. Thank you for hanging in there as well. Hanging out with me on a Saturday morning, doing this. Hopefully at some point this library is going to be used by someone and not only by my pet project. I think I would definitely use it already, honestly, if I had something in production. But the thing I am struggling with right now is to also find all these use cases and things we want to do, just because I don't have anything in production yet. But I think maybe working on the deployment scenarios next time would be a good thing to do. Alright, so I'm going to go copy over some syntax here. So just bear with me for a few minutes while I get this done here. So confusion matrix is going to be this one. And if you see something that doesn't make any sense here, then let me know. And I think actually what I'll do here is and I'm going to remove this one here. And I don't think I need these anymore, so let's remove those as well. We'll see if I need them or not. Okay. And it's gonna, for these I'm actually just gonna do this, I think. There's no real need to be more explicit. Run ID. Okay, data is done. And then we do iData here. We remove that. We remove this one. We do this one. And close this one. This is so much fun. It'll be good though. It's something that I wanted to do for the last few weeks here, and I'm just going to do it now. And I see an issue directly here. So this is a case where we actually want to not map it, right? So just rely on the entity framework context here, like that. Perfect. Next one here. Fortunately enough, there's not too many of these to work on, so it's definitely makes it easier. Okay, this is what I was worried about. I had the wrong thing here. Data column. And the reason I'm doing this again is because I'm going to remove these interfaces away from our context here. I don't think we need them. Okay. And it's just something we have to do. There's nothing else to do than this. Name. Okay. Nothing worried about there. Okay, keep going to data schema in that case. Data schema is going to be our next one here. And if I haven't lost you already, I will probably lose you very soon. I'm sure you have more fun things to do on a Saturday morning. But this needs to get done. Let's see, run ID, come on. Data ID. Count. So here's another one that we want to map now. We won't actually use Entity Framework here, and we want to do that. And I have to do that on the other ones too here. The data here, we don't want to use a schema anymore, so we want to use the actual one here. Okay. And I think I want to add some other relationships here later, but for now that's good. Did I remove this one? Did not, okay. Perfect. All right, we're getting closer, guys. Getting closer. Experiment. Remove this one. We'll put this one here. This one here is also one that we want to start mapping now, so runs, and it's going to be I by run here. Be better. Okay, 3 more. Almost there. Okay. Did I do experiment now? Can I stop spelling things incorrectly here? Parameter. Okay. It's all good. Okay. I'm surprised that we don't have the ID. Somebody thinks here like it's actually pretty good that we do this, because when I'm looking at the interface here, we are missing some of our implementations here. So that's not good. For example, we couldn't get the ID of a hyperparameter. I'm not sure if it would be much value, but still, could be useful. Okay. So here, for example, like when it comes to the hyperparameter, I think that's fine. We'll see if we have implemented this correctly later, if things will work or not, but we may want to fix up some of our stuff here later. Like our relationships. Okay, I like this a lot, this description here, so I'm going to do that here. And we could, of course, as a base class here, but I don't want to do that with ID and stuff like that. Value, run ID. Okay. All right, last one, guys. Last gun. Run ID. Let's do that one as well, and then we'll start cleaning things up here. This is the most boring part of this, for sure. We don't need this one anymore, probably. ID. Run dates. Experiment ID. this will be metrics. I'll do a list there. I'll do training time here. Alright. And since we do everything else together, we may as well do this one together. Alright. Let's see here. Any questions so far? Oh, hey Brett. Good to have you back again. You missed nothing, I promise you. Well, so what we did when you were gone is that we opened a PR for ability to get run by a commit ID, a commit hash. So the idea here is that we think, and I'll show you, we think that the best way to get a run for like a model test would be to actually query a run by the commit hash. Because the commit hash is something that we actually have generally available for us in GitHub Action. So we can already store associate a run with a commit hash. So when we create a run, we can pass in the commit hash to make it unique in some ways. And then in the sequent part of the workflow there, when we actually don't have the run ID available for us, but we do have the commit hash available for us, we can then get that run by commit hash. And that will allow us to get us the run and then get us the model and so forth. And from there, you know, we can do our model test. So check for how good our metrics are, and check how good the model is using new data and so forth. So it's a really simple addition here. Like it's nothing, but it's definitely going to be valuable, I think, for our model tests. But after that, I switched back to refactoring our MLOps context right now. Because I want to remove some of these interfaces here, and I want us to instead just use our entities here, because by doing that I think we can simplify some stuff and use Entity Framework Core more. So now I'm going to remove these, and it's kind of boring whenever you join back, but we're going to get this done. So when I build now, it's going to have a lot of build errors, so let's fix those real quick. And then see how things are looking. And they'll be mostly on return methods, I think. Okay. So remove that, it's all good. So what I'm trying to do here is just make it easier for everyone to start contributing to the repo. Because it's a little bit complicated right now when in terms of how we use the storage providers. And I want us to rather limit our providers and rely more on EF Core to make the code a bit easier for everyone. That's the idea here, at least. If it's complicated, then no one is going to use this library. Okay. Okay. Get best run. Where are we now? Lifecycle catalog. Okay. Okay, this is get runs. Okay. So let's go in here, fix these up. So instead of interface here now, we're actually returning actual implementation. Clean this up. Yeah. It's like, it's too much duplication right now, and that was good when we started this library, I think, because it made things easy to get started with. But now when we're growing, we need to kind of have a look at it again and make sure it's simple, which is good. I'm happy with that. Something I never have enough time to do on like client projects is to swing back and okay, let's look at it and, you know, make things actually make sense for us. Oh, Jesus. But we do have time now, so we'll take that time. Okay. Good. So let's check here. We need to clean up some stuff here. Experiments. Metric. And the idea here is, well, why we do this is mostly because eventually, like once make sure this works properly, I want to clean up this metadata store here and make it simpler. because I think we can make this code a lot easier to both understand and to create by not doing these kind of stuff right here, for example. But I'll leave it for now, just to make sure our test works. Okay. Let's see here. Do we have any other build errors? I think we have one at least, but okay, we're getting almost done to none. This one is going to be implementation instead. And this is going to be an actual concrete class. Okay. Perfect. So Brett, how's been going for you in ML.NET at your organization? Any luck so far? Still working on some use cases? Let's see. Last one. Okay, get metric. Something is missing here. Oh, okay. It builds properly. Nice. Clean those up. Okay, time for the tests. Getting closer. Maybe the last one. Let's see. Sounds good. That's great. That's awesome. Good to hear, Brett. I think you can definitely get a lot of use of just ML.NET to start off with and create your models, and then once we get this library to function and state for a broader use case, then that's awesome if you want to use it. I feel like the next thing you want to work on probably is deployment scenarios or the UI to understand how we can actually get the models out there as well. Yeah, I definitely want to get up to a useful thing. And what I want to do as well is to make sure we have a proper testing as well, so we deploy something that can be used that actually fully work as well. Alright, so that looks good. Now I want to... Yeah. Sketch UI. Clarified. Let's see what it is. Cool. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Oh yeah, exactly, yeah. We had an issue for it, yeah. That'd be awesome to kind of draw something up. I think we want something just pretty simple, but we need someone that wants to have a go at it for sure. Okay, alright, I'm going to... Yep. I'm going to do one thing here to make sure this works. Here we go. I'm going to call this migrate right now to make sure our test works. Alright, let's see if this works now. So I'm going to run the SQLite test first here. Exactly, yeah. We need something started for sure. No, but that's awesome. I mean, I think... What are your thoughts, Brett? What do you think the next things need to be added for you to be able to use it at your organization? I feel like we definitely at least need some kind of deployment support and maybe some basic UI to visualize some of the statistics we're catching, right? Anything else that you... Or is that completely wrong? Okay. Got some failing tests here. Look at that a bit. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I guess good input, but should definitely look at it next time. All right, so we have an issue here. No data table. So that's interesting. Let's see if we can figure that out. So now we're gonna have some issues with our content, I think, because we just changed things up here. and it says that we don't have a data table, which is funny. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's a use case for many as well, go to the cloud in some way or another. So that's good to know. Okay, create DB context. So we have the data set here. So I'm a bit surprised that we actually don't have a table called data. And let's open up SQL Server here and run this testing on SQL Server and understand. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, awesome that you want to help out. Appreciate that. Run these tests. It's definitely a fun project. I wish I could do this full time. That would be fun. Building tools is a really fun thing for sure. I enjoy it. Okay, let's see. I wonder if this is working well. So let's make sure we log into our container here and look at the structure we have, because I think something is up here. And if you run a container locally, we actually have that login credentials here. It's going to be up in the top here. This is like a very unsensitive, like very no one really cares about this. This is a local container, so we can just copy this in here. Okay, so that means it's not up and running yet. So we can do that by starting it. But why is it passing otherwise? Okay. Okay, let's see. VS Code is the easiest way to get this running. So let's do that. Let me see what I'm going to open at first. Okay, nothing. Good. I usually just like managing my own Docker stuff from here. It's easier. I'm sure it's better ways of doing this. Okay. It seems like it's running though. So I'm surprised why I couldn't get into it. Maybe I missed the last one there. I'm not sure. Yes, okay, good. Alright, we're in. Let's look at this. So this is running in a container actually in Linux. You can see that little thing there. That's quite a cool thing. So we're running a container locally, and we have our database here, and it's saying that if you look at the tests here, did all our SQL Server tests pass? Oh, okay. So they passed, but our SQLite did not pass. That is very interesting. Well, it's good that it passes. I'm mostly surprised that our SQLite didn't pass, because they are doing the same thing. I wonder if we need to drop that database and recreate it to make this work. Yeah, I think so. And what else do we have here? Given a run. This one is also failing. That we just created here, and it's saying we found a different run ID. I think it's because we're not cleaning things up here, and that's why it's not working properly. Okay, so I think what we need to do here is do the same thing as in our SQL Server test, clean things up, and then run them again. What I'm going to do right now is to drop this database here real quick here, and then we will try this again. I'm not trying to solve this issue right now, I'm just trying to make sure that our tests work. Okay, but then also what I want to do here is copy over our save method, and these are things we definitely need to look at as a team here, because we have a lot of duplication right now with our test. And I've been thinking more and more about it, that we need to fix this. I think it still makes sense to have like a test file for each implementation, because I want to make sure that we, from a higher perspective, ensure that things work as expected. regardless if it's using a shared functionality under the surface here. But it's also a duplication, so that could probably be better, I think. Okay, why is that not working? Use SQL Lite. In case we need entity framework packages here for this library if we want to do this. And that's all good. Okay. And we'll change it to SQLite to get that working. Huh, okay, I don't have any. Well, they're actually here. We'll add those here. I think it's called SQLite. We'll see in a bit. Build this. I'm gonna get this working. It's definitely time for this to work now. Okay. Perfect, okay. Got that one going, and then we'll say use, I know. Use SQL Lite. And we can just copy paste the code from the context builder here. We'll just use this instead, honestly. So we have the same place. This library is growing so fast. I'm trying to find things now. That's why it's important to refactor as well, to make sure we find things. Alright, let's run these tests now. And now if they don't pass, we definitely have another issue at our hands. But this should work. We will know in a bit. Okay, that all failed, but that's okay. Now they at least deleted the database, so let's go ahead and not do that anymore. And let's see if it works. Because I wanted to create a fresh database. We had some issues with SQLite, I think, with old data. But let's try this. Please pass. Oh, okay. Interesting. So, I thought migrate did both things. I thought it both created as well as migrated, but that may not be the case, because when I removed it now, this doesn't seem that it wanted to do what I wanted to do. Let's see if that's the case. If so, we definitely learned something new here. Nope, that's not the issue. Okay. Yeah, I think it the migrate one is definitely like a tricky one. We have to look at a separate PR. But this one is interesting though, because this is kind of what I was worried about. We now try to create a database, and it doesn't seem that it's actually creating it properly. So let's try this. Since I can't really watch SQLite properly. Let's go ahead and delete this database here in SQL Server. And let's try to run the SQL Server tests and see if we actually create all the tables in it. If there is something here that is not working with our new approach here. And I'm trying to figure out what that is, so we can move on from here. So I would expect this to create my database and my tables. It should take about 10 seconds to do that. Okay, that's passing at least. Okay, so that is doing it just fine. If we refresh this one, I would assume that we have our database, yep, and we have tables. Yep, and they are called what I expect them to be called, same thing as that. So that's interesting. So SQL Server works as expected, but SQLite doesn't like that. And why is that? We have using SQLite here. We call ensure created just like we did everywhere else. And let's run this again here. And then run the Azure ones after that. Interesting. Why would they behave so differently since we have the same provider? We have an abstraction within the framework, but I still would have expected these to work. And they worked before I started working with Migrate and everything else here. Oh, come on. Don't do that to me. So what we're saying here. Create async, 3 exceptions. Test cleanup is okay, that's good. That's different. So it's the test cleanup that's from exceptions, not the actual tests themselves. And why is that? Create DB context. And it's saying that we don't have experiments here. So if I copy this out, will that pass? Actually, if I just remove this completely. We're never going to run them repeatedly anyway, so it's not the whole world. But because they're going to run on an agent, and that should be fine. But I guess I don't fully understand the SQLite invitation here. Oh, nope, that didn't work either. Let's debug one of these. What am I missing here? This is definitely a challenge. What could it be? Create experiments. Okay, so we have our DB here. Context, it's all good. Let's look at how the connection look here. Experiments. Okay. We look at our entity framework stuff here under the surface. Let's look at our database. SQLite. Yep. I'm still so surprised because I think this is gonna blow up right here. Yep. Why? Why isn't it working? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I know. So what have we changed here that could have caused this to happen? We removed all the interfaces, and you know that's not going to change anything. And then when it comes to SQLite test here, we used the framework core for removal, and it worked before we start dropping the database, right? So before we dropped the database, it worked just fine. And then after that, it didn't work. So it's like it's I guess it could be local, honestly. I feel like I honestly want to try this on the build agent later, because it could be a local issue. I have a SQLite, because it worked when I had a database. Let's think of that, assume that's the case right now, and go and run the Azure tests here. And that'll be interesting to see. So I want to make sure these pass here. And then I open a PR over this, and we'll do some other refactoring while we run these tests in the GitHub Action workflow to see if SQLite works there at least. Because I'm curious about how Azure is going to behave with this change. Okay, Azure's happy. I'm happy. So let's open a PR with this to see if it runs in GitHub Actions. Moving into phases and context. Because then we're going to jump on the next thing here, which is to start fixing up our metadata store a bit here. So this is going to be the one I want to do, 185. Let's branch issue 185. Cancel. Sorry. Yeah, I think it's a local issue. Branch. Bring my changes. Yeah, it can have to be a local issue. We'll see. Let's run this at least. Okay, commit this one. These are the kind of PRs that are really boring to do, but they are so useful once we get them resolved later for the future. But they need to get done. Okay. So let's open a PR, let that run a bit. And okay, perfect. And go back to what we want to do here. So now we have this refactor. Now we can really start looking at going berserk on the context here. And what I mean with that is we have these things here in storage. Entities are gone now, good, okay. And where is it? Context. We have this DB context right here, right? And we want to fix up some of this stuff here, right here. So anytime we start constructing our things using multiple calls, we don't need them anymore. So in this case right here, we're fetching, everything related to the data, everything related to the data schema. So what we really want here is get the data, which is this one here. And there's really no need anymore to do all this underneath here. We were constructing our objects with related properties. So we can just do this and do this. That should be enough right now. And we'll run a test later to make sure that works. But that should be sufficient, which is much cleaner, right? A lot easier. Log the data. We probably need to do that as we do right now, because we're constructing data here and saving it. So that's okay. We can do that though. For the confusion matrix here, we probably need to do the same because we're returning another one than an entity. For logging these, that looks good. Set training time. Log metric is fine. Okay, so get run is interesting here. Get run. So this is going to be interesting. I think we use stuff here later that we need to fix here. So actually the metadata store here was pretty clean. It was not a big thing here. But I think we are using this get run here, get runs, in a way we can clean up things here. So get best run, at least I thought so. I feel like there's one place here we actually started to create these things here. Okay. maybe we didn't, honestly. And now we actually don't need this list neither, because it's going to be, well, we need the list, I guess, but we don't need the final value. I'm trying to find places here that we can clean up. These are of course good ones, but there are more. I'm certain that we constructed a run object somewhere in this repo. Create run, and we constructed the metrics and everything else here. We can look at a run here. The way it looks like is that we have metrics, it's a list here, and I think we also probably want to add hyperparameters here to this one here. So let's do that. So we can add metrics, we can do public hyperparameter. Like that. And I think we can also add the confusion matrix entity here, because it also has a run ID. So we'll add a version property to that one. And we'll make this virtual as well, because these are lazy loaded. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So I wonder in Entity Framework Core. In Entity Framework, you can do lazy loading here, but I think in EF Core that would be different. So I would be. Let's do this. Let's not do this right now. What I want to do is I want to run the data test, because I want to make sure that we fetch the data properly now. So now we have removed the construction of the data schema here. So we should have tests here failing, if that's the case. And I'm going to remove this one right now. And I think we need to fix that by implementing some other stuff. Let's run these tests here. Let's see. The reason why I'm concerned here is that I think we need to add options for our Entity Framework Core context here to use proxies for lazy loading, or force them to be lazy loaded. Yep, I think that's the case. We see that here already. The log data here is not going to work because the data here is not working. Today, I don't know actually. I think I'm gonna get outside a bit more. It's really warm here, DC. It's like 30s plus Celsius and like 36 next days. But yeah, trying to get out a bit more and enjoy life outside the computer, I think. What do you have planned, Brent? Anything fun? Let's see this one. Try to do this one again. Any fun plans? I know, coding it takes a lot of my time for sure. But sometimes you need to see the sun as well and do something else. Alright, this is not working, which is interesting. Alright, so this is null, and that's okay. Oh, cool. Well, good luck with the house sale. That's always a lot of fun. I'm going to just Google this real quick here, because I think EF Core does this a bit differently than I'm used to. Worked off with the old EF. But I think we need to do this one here. So I think what we need to do here is go into our extensions here. I'm trying to go back to Sweden, by the way, for vacation now, since it's summer. But it's just really difficult to get to Sweden right now. There's a few flights going, and even though they have banned people to go, I can still go, but it's not so easy when there's no flights. Let's see, is this what it's called? I think this is what it's called. No, I'm settled here. I've been here for 4 years almost, so quite some time in the US. Not going back anytime soon, at least. But yeah. Let's see. How do we use this? Use related load proxies. I feel like I'm missing something here. Use. I think I'm probably missing a package here, because this should be an option that I can set here for proxies. And what is the... What is the NuGet package that we need here? It's definitely proxies. Okay, well, that was simple. I should have figured that out myself. Okay. Some Swedish in there as well. Okay. Cool. So we'll need a proxies extension here. But yeah, when it comes to the US though, I'm not sure. We'll see what happens after November 3rd when we have the election in this country. I moved there just before Trump was elected, and it was a rough night for sure when he was elected. And without going into the politics here, I'm not sure if I'm going to stay in the US if he gets re-elected. It's a little bit too crazy for me. But there's definitely people that like him. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Perfect, okay. We'll do that. We'll do the same thing for SQLite. So hopefully what it's going to do is going to load everything that's virtual for us properly. Actually, I'll do this afterwards here. Alright, let's see. So hopefully this is going to make these pass at least, which will be good. Yeah, absolutely. It's very divided. It's very polarized, and there's not much nothing to unite the country right now for sure. Alright, so now it's failed because of the other one. Okay, so cool. So now we have some better idea here of what's going on here. I'm going to unseal our classes because we need them for things. We're going to make stuff here virtual. Well, they need to be virtual. And data is fine. This is virtual. Data column is going to be virtual. And this one needs to be virtual. So all of our navigation properties need to be virtual right now to make sure Entity Framework can populate them when they need to. And honestly, we should go back here and add runs here. So yeah, we already have it. I just missed that. How's the UK doing though, Brett? Like a larger scale? Metric. Sure, virtual. Yeah, it's when it comes to entity framework, I mean, virtual is a concept in C#, where you can you can create a class that is like your base class, whatever, and you can mark methods or you can mark properties as virtual. And then in your class inheritance from this one, you can mark them as override. So you can say, for example, let's say we have a method for run, which is like set name, and we can mark it as virtual in our base class, and then we can have a class inherit from that, like say specific run, and that can have a override method for set name. So in that case, it says it differently. In Entity Framework is a bit different. The idea here is that we make them as virtual, so that Entity Framework can override implementation and populate them with navigation properties. So if you don't make them virtual, then Entity Framework can't set, for example, metrics in this case, and they will be null, and we don't want that. So for example here, I want to add stuff like hyper parameter, right? Like that, but it needs to be virtual for it to be able to be populated. And I'll do the same thing here for confusion matrix as well, so we can access them if we need to. So the issue we're seeing right now with the test is that we're actually not getting any of these properties. They're all null because Entity Framework is not able to populate them. But now it should be able to populate them. Let's try to do this again. Yep. It's a concept it's not used very often anymore, honestly. I think, you know, there's another discussion to be had about composition versus inheritance, where in composition you're trying to compose an object of multiple things, and in inheritance you're trying to build it up from a base class. And I'm generally against inheritance for the reason that it just makes code complicated. But it's still used, so version override has good meaning in that sense. Okay, what is wrong here? Okay, that's not bad. We have like 70,000 new cases a day, so it's a lot here in the US. Okay. So, interesting. So, what we're saying here is that we're trying to load, in our case, a data schema entity after the context was disposed. So, we need to fix that in some ways. Yep, I know. Okay, it failed. Interesting. So that needs to be fixed, for sure. Yeah, I know. The US is out of control when it comes to cases. Alright, so that didn't work as I wanted to, but I think we can do here is use include, right? Oh, actually, do I need to use that? I think what I want to do is not use later loading actually, but will it... Sorry, I'm thinking about how this is going to work here. If I say false here, if I set false, what happens then? Let's say it's false, and maybe I actually don't want to use lazy loading. Maybe I just wanted to have virtual properties, and that would have worked just fine. It's very likely that's the case, because what lazy loading says, right, is that load a proxy to my navigation properties when I fetch the parent object, and when I need my child objects, make sure to fetch them for me, which is useful sometimes when you want a smaller object and just like fetch smaller things, but then you have multiple trips to the database. In our case here, we kind of really want everything at the same time, because right now we don't have a context open when they want the smaller things, and it's got failing. But we actually want everything available, and I thought that would work. But EF core navigation property not loading. What am I doing wrong here? I think it's a simple issue of some sort here. Yeah. What if I don't want to include though? Yeah, I could do this, which will load our properties, but what if I by default want to do that? Okay, well, I think we need to rethink our approach here, which is not too bad, just unfortunate. Okay, so we don't want this loading because we are not going to have that available for us when we want it, so we'll remove that, and we'll use include instead to fetch things when we need them. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to get this done today. I want a PR on this. Okay, so when we go to the store here, in our case here, the way we're gonna get this working, I think, is by saying, can we do? Okay, so we can't do that there, but that'd be fine. So we want to do it here. So data, we want to do include, and we want to do data schema dot data columns, and I think that's going to fetch everything for us that is related. And I think we still need to make them virtual. I'm not sure. Let's try that first here. So let's try that real quick here and see if that works. If it does work, we want to try something else, and then I want to fix that for everywhere else that we need this. But that's going to be, I think, the way you want to make sure we trigger sequential queries to be fetching our navigation properties. Hopefully. Yep, see? That is so simple. That made it work. So include here is the way we want to do it. Okay, alright, so what if I make this non-virtual then? Is that going to work? What if I make this non-virtual? And what if I make this one non-virtual? So I'm not using lazy loading here. Yeah, exactly. That's why I think the two threads. That was like my assumption almost, that we had like a default, like just, you know, populate all my navigation properties that are marked as virtual. Don't think this is one of those defaults in the framework core, which is a shame. It would make it easier. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we don't need to mark them as virtual. That means we can mark everything as sealed again and non-virtual. But then we also have to make sure we do this whenever we want associated data. So let's do that real quick here, clean it up. At least we know how this works now, and that's you know, that's a good thing. So I'm gonna copy this one, and I like sealed. I always try to make everything sealed if I can, because I don't want someone to inherit from these things if I don't have to. So sealed, sealed. Nothing here to worry about. And this is already not virtual, it's good. Experiment. We'll do that. Awesome stuff. Oh, sorry. Not so awesome stuff. That's where it should go. Sorry. Didn't meant to build there, but want to build. Okay. And then move these. Okay, perfect. So let's go back to the metadata store. Let's add some stuff here, and then I want to add a unit test as well, integration test, to make sure we actually get stuff for the runs here. So this is just creating stuff, so we don't care about anything. Creating is like pointless right now. We don't really care about those, so let's just make them smaller. But get experiments though, we want to do that. So here, what we want to do is say, okay, if you get an experiment, please include the run here. And also, when you do that, you include runs metric. Is it? Let's see. I am very against C# regions. Just so you know. And the reason for that is because I think they speak about a bigger issue, which is which has to do with size of your classes. And I already think that we have too much in this one, so we should look at that later. But if we need to use regions, that means that we probably have an issue just in general with the size of things here. And we probably want to have multiple classes and interfaces instead. Yeah, I mean, it is comfortable, of course, to have them because you can like do things, but in general, they speak about like something else you need to address. Metrics, hypermeters, confusion matrix. Okay, I think that's going to be fine right now. And then get experiment here, same thing. I'm not sure if I want to do that, honestly. I used to be actually pro regions, to be honest. Like, it was something, I wasn't always against regions. But I realized the more I looked at older code that it generally talks about like a bigger issue that needs to be solved. So I changed my opinion on that a bit. And it kind of goes back to the case of like having time to address technical debt. Like, you know, what we're doing right now is addressing technical debt, making things a bit more simpler and easier. And you don't always have time for that. And that's an issue, I think. And then you end up with these regions because that's the easiest thing to do, right? It's safe to add a region instead of separating into multiple classes. But what you really should do is address the fact that you have so much in one class. Get run, get runs. Okay. I think that's okay. Log hypermeters here is fine. Okay. So I think we've added that properly, but now I want to add a test here to make sure we get stuff from a run. So if we save a run and get a run, we want to make sure we have the associated information, right? So we can add a simple integration test here for SQL Server to make sure that it's working as expected. And we'll do that here. And we'll just use get create run test here. Okay, as a base. So in our case here, let's say we say create a run, right? Experiment and a run, and with info metrics. Get run should include associated data. Okay, so in our case here, this is going to be a range. And then act here is going to be run. Wait, so to get run by ID. That's fine. We'll do the sync method. We'll do await here. And what I want to add here as well is some more stuff. Life cycle. So we want to add some metrics as well here. So we want to say wait, life cycle. Evaluation here, I think. Log metrics. And we'll just do like this one right now, I think. So we'll do ID and we'll do F1 score because it's easy to spell, and we'll do 5060, right? Okay, so we expect at least to get a metric here as well. And what else do we want to do here? Can we do like a training? So a hyperparameter, for example, could be good as well. So we'll do that. So we'll do trainer. We'll say this is going to be a trainer of support vector machine, maybe. Okay. So if we get a run now, let's do that here. Get run. Okay, sure. Is this? Okay. Apparently it's not a sync method. It's okay. If we get that run right now, I want to make sure that things we get here is okay. So we should have metrics first. So to get the first one here, we want to make sure that the metric name should be F1 score. And this is just to make sure that we actually can get the relationships, right? We know that we can save them already in other tests, but we don't know yet if we can actually save them and use them later. So that's why I'm doing this here. Okay. And then we also want to make sure we get the hyperparameter here, so hyperparameter. And if this works, then we know the rest is going to mostly work here, so run hyperparameter. And I think this is incorrect. This should be a list of hyperparameters. Should be a multiple. And when it comes to confusion matrix, we only have one, so it should be good. And here, we'll do the first. We should have one. Okay. This is going to be a good test, I feel like, to test some things here. Okay. And then we'll do the value, and then we'll run this test. Okay, so let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Hopefully that should work. And that will at least tell us that we are getting our runs back and it has associated data, nothing is null. And that only works if we do this. Okay, we made that a list. We'll make sure we do that properly. Okay. Let's see. It's been a long stream today. Wow, almost up to 2 hours now. I need to get some lunch. do want to get this properly working at least, or something first. A good stopping point, hopefully. Okay, look at that. So that seems to work. We have a test now to make sure that when we fetch data as well, we're getting it. We can use include here, and that works good. So this one seems to be working. Let's do the same test for get runs here. To make sure that works. So I'll do a very similar one. We set get runs. So we're going to do, the only difference here is going to be get runs instead. And this is just to make sure we have the same thing there. Okay, and while we run that, I'm going to copy this over. I thought we had a... Oh, maybe we actually don't have a get runs method here on this one. Maybe it's only get run. Okay, get best runs. Okay. Okay, that's fine. We'll skip that one for now, and we'll copy this over to Azure tests, and then we'll push this and see what we get here. And then at some point we should go back and fix these tests in general, because they are a little bit too convoluted right now. And okay, so let's run the integration test in Azure. That's what I'm curious about here. Azure integration test. I want to run the ones I care about, which are these tests here, and see how they do. I'm wondering if we can even simplify the context soon. I think we're good, but we'll start with this at least. Okay, they are failing. Interesting. And this was kind of what I was worrying about. We have a non-embedded include expression. And the reason why I'm worried about this is because we use NoSQL in Azure with the Cosmos DB, and we clearly have a different way of doing this here. Non-embedded, it's not supported. What does that mean even? I thought I embedded it already. Okay. Alright, I think this is a good stopping point. I need to look into what this issue is, and we've been over 2 hours, so I need some lunch and some coffee, but interesting enough, we seem to have some Cosmos issues. We seem to have some issues with SQLite here, even on the... Oh, unit test is failing. Maybe not actually. See that issue with unit test here, which is okay. So in general, I think yes, there was a local issue with SQLite. The unit test failing, we fixed that easily. We have some issues with Azure implementation, because in Azure we use Cosmos DB, which means that we embed the entity. So we don't have a separate table for them right now. We had them as embedded. So it doesn't seem like it likes that right now. So we have to look at how we can address that differently. But that's all good. That's something you have to Google and look up later. I'm going to push these changes anyway, and we can revisit that a bit to see if we can find a better solution around that. But that's fun. I mean, that's going to be... I think we're going to figure this out. Just a matter of understanding Cosmos DB a bit better. And hopefully we get to work. Anyhow, thank you all for joining in this stream today. I had a blast as always. Slowly moving along in this project. Look forward to continuing working with you and having fun. And I'm glad you enjoyed the stream as well, Brett. Hope you have a great day and enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. Thank you. Bye-bye.